The Shadow Engine. Chapter 1, The Crimson Dawn. The observation deck of the ICS Dominion hummed with the low thrum of quantum engines as Lieutenant Rosa Bellens watched the stars whirl past in their eternal dance. 27 years old, with sharp hazel eyes and prematurely silver-streaked hair, a genetic quirk that had earned her the nickname Storm among her peers, Rosa had seen more combat than most officers twice her age. The Intergalactic Council had kept peace across 47 galaxies for over 3 centuries, but that peace was about to shatter like crystal against stone. Lieutenant Bellens to the war room, Priority Alpha. The voice crackled through her comm implant, cutting through her meditation. Rosa straightened her midnight blue uniform and made her way through the ship's corridors. The Dominion was a Nexus-class battlecruiser, one of the Council's most advanced vessels, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Its hull was composed of molecularly bonded duranium, capable of withstanding the exotic energies that raged between galaxies. As she walked, Rosa noticed the increased activity among the crew, engineers rushing between stations, tactical officers poring over holographic displays, and the subtle tension that preceded every major operation. The war room doors hissed open, revealing a circular chamber dominated by a massive holographic projector. The three-dimensional display showed a sector of space that Rosa didn't immediately recognize, filled with swirling clouds of stellar debris and the ominous red signatures of enemy vessels. Lieutenant Bellens reporting as ordered, sir. Rosa snapped to attention before Admiral Kane Thorne, a weathered veteran whose cybernetic left eye glowed with a faint blue light. At ease, Lieutenant. Thorne's voice carried the weight of command and the weariness of someone who had seen too much war. We have a situation that requires your particular expertise. Rosa's pulse quickened. Her particular expertise referred to her record in covert operations, 18 successful infiltration missions, including the liberation of the Kepler mining colonies and the neutralization of the Void cultists' leadership. 3 days ago, Thorne continued, gesturing to the holographic display, long-range sensors detected massive energy buildups in the Andromeda spiral. Initially, we thought it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a black hole merger or a stellar collision. We were wrong. The display shifted, showing a vast fleet of ships unlike anything in the Council's databases. Their hulls were organic in appearance, seeming to pulse with bioluminescent patterns. Some vessels resembled massive cephalopods, their tentacle-like appendages trailing through space, while others looked like enormous insects with chitinous armor and multiple weapon arrays. The consortium, Thorne said, his voice heavy with grim recognition. An alliance of 36 species from the Outer Rim, led by the Zephyrians. They've been building their forces in secret for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. Rosa studied the display, her tactical mind automatically cataloging the enemy's capabilities. What's their objective, sir? Complete overthrow of the Council. They claim we've imposed our will on the galaxy for too long, that it's time for a new order. Thorne's expression darkened. They're not entirely wrong about our methods, but that's a discussion for another time. What matters now is that they have the firepower to back up their claims. The hologram zoomed in on one particular vessel, a massive sphere that dwarfed even the largest Council dreadnoughts. Its surface writhed with organic patterns, and energy crackled between numerous spires jutting from its equator. This is the Leviathan, Thorne explained. The consortium's flagship and mobile command center. But it's not just a ship, intelligence suggests it's also their primary power source. Rosa leaned forward, intrigued. How so? The Zephyrians have developed something they call the Shadow Engine. It's a fusion of their biotechnology with exotic matter manipulation. The engine doesn't just power their ships, it can siphon energy directly from nearby stars, creating localized gravitational anomalies, and even manipulate space-time on a limited scale. The implications hit Rosa like a physical blow. They could tear apart entire star systems. Exactly. And according to our intelligence network, the Shadow Engine isn't just on the Leviathan, it's on Zephyria Prime, their homeworld. The ship's engine is merely a subsidiary node. The main engine is buried deep within their planet's core, drawing power from the planet's molten center and the system's binary stars. Rosa's mind raced through the strategic implications. If we could destroy the main engine, the entire consortium fleet would be crippled. Their ships would be reduced to conventional propulsion and weapons. We could end this war before it truly begins. Thorn's cybernetic eye focused on Rosa with laser intensity. That's where you come in, Lieutenant. An infiltration mission to Zephyria Prime, Rosa said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was being asked. Precisely. We're assembling a small team, 6 operatives with complementary skills. Your mission will be to infiltrate the planet, locate the Shadow Engine, and destroy it. The fate of the Intergalactic Council, and potentially all civilized life in the known galaxies, depends on your success. Rosa felt the familiar mixture of excitement and terror that preceded every major operation. What's our insertion method? Thorn activated another section of the hologram, showing a detailed schematic of Zephyria Prime. The planet was a world of contradictions, vast oceans teeming with bioluminescent life, continents covered in crystalline forests, and cities that seemed to grow from the planet itself rather than being built upon it. Zephyria Prime is heavily defended, Thorn explained. Orbital platforms, sensor grids, and patrol fleets. A direct assault would be suicide. However, we've identified a weakness. The Zephyrians rely heavily on their biotechnology, including their detection systems. Our scientists have developed stealth technology that mimics their own biological signatures. We'll be disguised as one of their own ships? Better than that. You'll be infiltrating aboard a captured consortium vessel, a scout ship we acquired 3 months ago during a skirmish in the Vega system. Our technicians have modified it to respond to your team's biosignatures and equipped it with the necessary stealth systems. Rosa nodded, her mind already working through the logistics. What about the engine itself? How do we destroy something that's buried in a planet's core? Thorn's expression grew even more serious. That's where things get complicated. The Shadow Engine isn't just a machine, it's a living entity. The Zephyrians have somehow bonded their technology with a creature from the space between dimensions. Conventional explosives won't work. We need to sever the connection between the creature and the engine. How? We're not entirely sure. Our best xenobiologists believe it requires a combination of quantum resonance disruptors and psionic interference. We've developed a device that should do the job, but it needs to be deployed at the exact center of the engine complex. Rosa absorbed this information, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. When do we leave? 1800 hours. I'll have the mission briefings sent to your quarters, along with the personnel files for your team. Study them carefully, Lieutenant. You'll need to trust these people with your life. As Rosa saluted and turned to leave, Thorn called out to her. Rosa, this mission is classified at the highest levels. If you're captured, the Council will disavow all knowledge of your mission. You'll be on your own. Understood, sir. We won't let you down. I know you won't. That's why I chose you for this. Chapter 2, The Gathering Storm. Rosa's quarters aboard the Dominion were spartanly furnished, a narrow bunk, a desk with a holographic display, and a small viewport that showed the swirling nebulae of the Sagittarius Arm. The walls were decorated with only a few personal items, a holographic image of her family on New Terra, a commendation medal from the Kepler Liberation, and a small crystal sculpture given to her by the refugees she had saved during the Void Cultist crisis. She sat at her desk, reviewing the personnel files that Thorn had transmitted, each one representing a life that would soon be in her hands. The weight of command had never felt heavier than it did now, knowing that she was about to lead these people into a situation that could determine the fate of all known civilization. Rosa's own path to this moment had been forged through years of increasingly dangerous missions. Born on New Terra, a frontier world on the edge of Council space, she had grown up understanding that peace was a fragile thing that required constant vigilance to maintain. Her parents had been killed in a pirate raid when she was 16, leaving her with a burning desire to protect others from the same fate. The academy years had been challenging but rewarding. Rosa had excelled in tactical studies and xenobiology, but it was her performance in the covert operations program that had caught the attention of her instructors. She possessed that rare combination of analytical thinking and intuitive understanding that made for exceptional field operatives. Her first major mission had been the infiltration of a separatist cell on Rigel 7. The separatists had been planning to assassinate the Council's diplomatic envoy, potentially sparking a war that could have engulfed 3 star systems. Rosa had spent 6 months undercover, gradually working her way into the cell's inner circle. When the time came to act, she had prevented the assassination and provided intelligence that led to the peaceful resolution of the underlying political crisis. The Kepler liberation had been her most challenging assignment before this one. The mining colonies in the Kepler system had been seized by a militant faction that was using the miners as forced labor. The colonies were too well defended for a direct assault, and the militants had threatened to execute the miners if the Council attempted a rescue. Rosa had led a small team in a nighttime infiltration of the primary mining facility, neutralizing the militant leadership and coordinating with the miners to organize a rebellion from within. But it was the Void cultist crisis that had truly tested her abilities. The cultists were a fanatical group that believed they could achieve immortality by sacrificing themselves to entities from other dimensions. They had managed to create a small dimensional rift on the abandoned world of Zirion Prime, and something had begun to emerge from it. Rosa had been part of a joint task force sent to investigate, and she had been the only survivor of the initial contact with the entity that had pushed through the rift. The experience had left her with a deep understanding of the threats that existed beyond the normal dimensions, and it was probably why Admiral Thorne had chosen her for this mission. She understood, in a way that few others could, the alien nature of the entities that lurked in the void between realities. The first file belonged to Sergeant Marcus Chen, a demolitions expert from the Terran Special Forces. 32 years old, with a record of successful operations spanning 12 years. His file noted an incident on Proxima Centauri where he had single-handedly destroyed a rebel stronghold, saving 300 civilian hostages. The psychological evaluation described him as methodical, precise, and absolutely reliable under pressure. Rosa studied Chen's background more closely. He had been born on Earth, in the ruins of what had once been called Hong Kong. The city had been rebuilt after the climate wars of the 22nd century, but the scars of that conflict still shaped those who grew up there. Chen's family had run a small engineering firm that specialized in controlled demolitions for urban reconstruction projects. He had learned the precise art of explosives from his father, understanding that destruction, when properly controlled, could be a tool of creation. Chen's military record was exemplary. He had served in 17 major operations, including the pacification of the Vega Rebellion and the liberation of the Tau Ceti mining colonies. What impressed Rosa most was not just his technical skill, but his ability to improvise under pressure. On Proxima Centauri, when his original demolition plan had been compromised by unexpected rebel defenses, he had managed to jury-rig an explosive device from mining equipment and medical supplies, creating a controlled blast that brought down the rebel stronghold without harming the hostages held in the lower levels. The psychological profile noted that Chen had a tendency toward perfectionism that occasionally bordered on obsession. He would spend hours planning each demolition, considering every possible variable and contingency. But when the time came to act, he could adapt his plans with lightning speed, his instincts honed by years of experience with high explosives. The second file was more unusual. Dr. Lyra Voss, a xenobiologist and former member of the Council's first contact team. Her expertise in alien physiology and culture had made her invaluable in understanding the consortium's biotechnology. What made her file particularly interesting was her history with the Zephyrians. She had been part of the team that had first encountered them 40 years ago, when they were still a peaceful species focused on biological research. Rosa found herself deeply intrigued by Dr. Voss's background. The woman had been born on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, where the early terraforming experiments had created a unique ecosystem that blended terrestrial and alien biology. Growing up in such an environment had given Voss an intuitive understanding of how different forms of life could coexist and interact. Her academic career had been brilliant but unconventional. While most xenobiologists focused on cataloging and studying alien species from a distance, Voss had advocated for direct interaction and cultural exchange. She believed that understanding alien biology required understanding alien society, and vice versa. This philosophy had led to some spectacular successes, and some equally spectacular failures. The first contact with the Zephyrians had been one of her greatest triumphs. The Council's initial surveys had identified them as a technologically advanced species with a unique approach to biotechnology. Most races develop technology by manipulating inorganic materials, metals, crystals, synthetic compounds. The Zephyrians had taken a different path, learning to work with living organisms to create tools and structures that were both functional and alive. Voss had spent 3 years living among the Zephyrians, learning their language and studying their biointegration techniques. She had been fascinated by their ability to create symbiotic relationships with their technology, where the boundary between organism and tool became meaningless. Their cities were living entities that grew and adapted to their inhabitants' needs. Their vehicles were domesticated creatures that had been bred for transportation. Even their weapons were living things that could be trained and directed rather than simply fired. The Zephyrians had welcomed her with characteristic warmth and curiosity. They had been eager to share their knowledge and learn about other forms of life in the galaxy. Voss had established the first cultural exchange program between the Council and the Zephyrians, laying the groundwork for what everyone had hoped would be a long and fruitful relationship. But something had gone wrong. About 30 years ago, the Zephyrians had begun to withdraw from galactic society. Their communications became less frequent, their trade relationships dwindled, and their representatives to the Council became increasingly militant in their rhetoric. By the time the consortium was formed, the Zephyrians had transformed from peaceful researchers into aggressive expansionists. Voss had tried repeatedly to re-establish contact, to understand what had changed them. But her requests for diplomatic missions to Zephyria Prime had been denied, and the Zephyrians themselves had refused to meet with her. The guilt of that failure had haunted her for decades, and Rosa could see in her psychological profile that she blamed herself for not recognizing the signs of the entity's influence sooner. The third team member was Lieutenant Commander Kai Okafor, a pilot whose reflexes had been enhanced through cybernetic implants. His record showed an ability to fly anything from atmospheric fighters to deep space interceptors, with a particular talent for navigating hazardous environments. His file included a commendation for rescuing a stranded research team from the gravity well of a neutron star. The fourth file belonged to Corporal Zara Blackwood, a communications and electronic warfare specialist. Her background was in military intelligence, with expertise in code-breaking and system infiltration. Her psychological profile noted a tendency toward paranoia, but also an uncanny ability to anticipate enemy actions. The final member of the team was perhaps the most enigmatic. Chief Petty Officer Knox was a member of the Umbran species, one of the few races in the galaxy with natural psychic abilities. Their file was heavily classified, but Rosa could see references to operations involving psionic reconnaissance and dimensional interface protocols. The Umbrans were notoriously secretive about their capabilities, even among Council forces. Rosa spent the next several hours memorizing every detail of the mission briefings. The plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its complexity. They would approach Zephyria Prime in the captured scout ship, using the stealth systems to avoid detection. Once in orbit, they would use the ship's biotransporters to beam down to the planet's surface, where they would have to navigate through the living cities to reach the engine complex. The Shadow engine itself was located beneath the planet's primary metropolis, Nexus Gaia, a city of over 50 million Zephyrians that had grown from the planet's surface like a massive organism. The engine complex was situated at the city's heart, protected by layers of biomechanical defenses and patrolled by the consortium's elite guards. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. Rosa minimized the holographic displays and called out, "Enter." The door slid open to reveal a tall, lean woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of space itself. Dr. Lyra Voss looked younger than her 53 years, likely due to the life extension treatments common among deep space researchers. "Lieutenant Bellens? I'm Dr. Voss. I thought we should meet before the mission briefing." Rosa gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Please, call me Rosa. I've been reviewing your file. Your experience with the Zephyrians could be crucial to our success. Lyra settled into the chair, her expression thoughtful. I've been thinking about that. When I first encountered the Zephyrians 4 decades ago, they were a peaceful species. Their biotechnology was focused on healing and environmental restoration. Something changed them, Rosa. Something made them into the aggressive force they are today. What do you think it was? I believe it was contact with the entity that powers the Shadow Engine. The Zephyrians have always been sensitive to psychic influences. It's part of how they interface with their biotechnology. If they encountered something from another dimension, something with vast intelligence and alien motivations, it could have gradually corrupted their society. Rosa considered this. Are you saying the Zephyrians aren't acting of their own free will? I'm saying the situation may be more complex than the Council believes. The entity in the Shadow Engine might be using the Zephyrians as tools to expand its influence into our dimension. If that's the case, destroying the engine might not just save the Council, it might save the Zephyrians themselves. Before Rosa could respond, her comm implant chimed with an incoming message. All team members report to Briefing Room 7. Mission commencement in T-4 hours. The 2 women rose and made their way through the ship's corridors toward the briefing room. The Dominion's crew was in a state of controlled urgency. The ship was moving to battle stations as it prepared to engage the Consortium fleet as a distraction for the infiltration mission. Briefing Room 7 was smaller than the main war room, designed for tactical discussions rather than grand strategy. The other team members were already assembled, and Rosa took a moment to study them in person. Sergeant Chen was exactly as she had imagined, compact and efficient, with the kind of stillness that suggested coiled energy. Lieutenant Commander Okafor was tall and athletic, his cybernetic enhancements visible as faint traceries of light beneath his skin. Corporal Blackwood was shorter than Rosa had expected, with sharp features and an alert posture that suggested she was constantly analyzing her surroundings. Chief Petty Officer Knox was the most striking of the group. The Umbran stood nearly 7 feet tall, with dark blue skin that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their eyes were solid black, and when they spoke, their voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond the normal 3. The mission parameters have been finalized, Admiral Thorne announced as he entered the room. You'll be departing in the modified scout ship Whisper at 1800 hours. Your approach vector will take you through the Helix Nebula, where our fleet will be engaging the Consortium's advance guard. This should provide sufficient distraction for your insertion. The holographic display activated, showing a real-time tactical overview of the Zephyria system. The Consortium fleet was positioned in a defensive formation around the planet, with the massive Leviathan at the center. Council forces were approaching from multiple vectors, their formations designed to draw the enemy fleet away from the planet. Once you're on the surface, Thorne continued, you'll have approximately 72 hours before the Consortium realizes what you're attempting. After that, they'll flood the engine complex with defenders. Your window of opportunity will be narrow. Rosa studied the city schematics, noting the complex organic architecture that seemed to shift and change even as she watched. How do we navigate a living city? Dr. Voss leaned forward. Zephyrian cities are semi-sentient. They respond to the emotional and psychic states of their inhabitants. If we can maintain proper biosignatures and avoid triggering their defensive responses, the city itself should guide us to where we need to go. And if we trigger those responses? Sergeant Chen asked. The city will try to expel us. Literally. The buildings will reshape themselves to push us toward the surface, and the biomechanical defenses will activate. Chief Petty Officer Knox spoke for the first time, their voice carrying an otherworldly quality. There is something else. The entity within the Shadow Engine is aware. It knows we are coming. The room fell silent. Admiral Thorne leaned forward, his cybernetic eye focusing intently on the Umbran. Explain. The dimensional barriers are thin around the Shadow Engine. I can sense its presence, vast, ancient, and hungry. It has been feeding on the Zephyrian's life force for decades, growing stronger. It knows that Council forces approach, and it is preparing. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine. Preparing how? It is calling to others of its kind. If we do not act quickly, this entity will not be alone. An invasion from the space between dimensions could destroy not just the Council, but all life in this galaxy. Admiral Thorne absorbed this information, his expression grim. All the more reason to succeed. This mission is no longer just about winning a war, it's about preventing the complete annihilation of our reality. The briefing continued for another hour, covering everything from escape routes to contingency plans. When it was over, Rosa found herself alone in the corridor with her team, the weight of their mission settling heavily on all of them. "Well," Corporal Blackwood said, breaking the silence, "at least we know the stakes." "Indeed," Lieutenant Commander Okafor agreed. "No pressure at all." Despite the gravity of the situation, Rosa found herself smiling. "Let's get to the Whisper and run through our final preparations. We launch in 3 hours, and I want everyone to know their role inside and out." As the team dispersed to gather their equipment, Rosa caught Dr. Voss's arm. "Lyra, I need to ask you something. Do you think we can actually do this? Destroy something that's essentially a living god?" Lyra's expression was thoughtful. "I think we can try. And sometimes, Rosa, that's all we have, the courage to try when everything seems impossible." Chapter 3, Into the Abyss. The Whisper was a marvel of biomechanical engineering, its hull rippling with the same organic patterns that characterized consortium vessels. The ship's interior had been modified to accommodate the human crew, but traces of its original design remained: walls that pulsed with a faint heartbeat, corridors that seemed to breathe, and a central nervous system that responded to the crew's biometric signatures. Rosa stood in the ship's command center, watching the swirling energies of the Helix Nebula stream past the viewport. The nebula was a chaos of ionized gases and electromagnetic storms, perfect for concealing their approach to the Zephyria system. In the distance, she could see the flashes of weapons fire as the Council fleet engaged the consortium's advance guard. Approaching the nebula's edge, Lieutenant Commander Okafor reported from the pilot station. "Stealth systems are online and responding normally." Rosa nodded, feeling the familiar pre-mission tension building in her chest. Every member of the team was at their assigned station, running final checks on their equipment. The quantum resonance disruptor that would hopefully destroy the shadow engine was secured in the ship's central cargo bay, its exotic matter containment field humming softly. "Corporal Blackwood, what's our sensor reading?" Zara's fingers danced across her console, her cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the ship's systems. "Multiple consortium vessels in the outer system, but they're focused on the fleet engagement. No active scans in our direction. The stealth systems are holding." Dr. Voss looked up from her bioscanner. "The ship's organic components are responding well to our neural patterns. As far as any consortium sensors are concerned, we're one of their own scout ships returning from a routine patrol." Rosa activated the ship's intercom. "All stations, prepare for system entry. We're about to find out if our modifications are as good as the engineers claimed." The Whisper emerged from the nebula like a predator sliding through dark water. Zephyria Prime hung before them, a world of impossible beauty and terrible purpose. The planet's surface was covered in vast oceans of bioluminescent life, their patterns shifting in complex waves that seemed to pulse in rhythm with some planetary heartbeat. The continents were dominated by crystalline forests that rose thousands of meters into the atmosphere, their faceted surfaces refracting the light of the system's twin stars into spectacular aurora displays. But it was the cities that truly captured Rosa's attention. Nexus Gaia, the planetary capital, sprawled across an entire continent like a living organism. Massive biomechanical structures reached toward the sky, their surfaces covered in the same organic patterns that characterized all Zephyrian technology. The city seemed to breathe, its buildings expanding and contracting in a rhythm that matched the planet's own pulse. "Magnificent," Dr. Voss whispered. "Even knowing what we're here to do, I can't help but admire what they've created." "It's impressive," Rosa agreed, "but we can't forget that this same technology is being used to power weapons that could destroy entire star systems." Chief Petty Officer Knox stepped forward, their dark eyes reflecting the planet's light. "The entity stirs. It knows we are here. Rosa felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. Can it detect us specifically? Not yet. But it senses the approach of something that does not belong. We must move quickly. Lieutenant Commander Okafor's voice was tense. I'm reading increased patrol activity around the planet. 3 destroyer-class vessels are breaking off from the main fleet and heading in our direction. Rosa's mind raced through their options. They were still too far from the planet to use the biotransporters, but if they were detected now, the mission would be over before it began. Zara, can you tap into their communications network? Corporal Blackwood's fingers flew across her console. Working on it, got it. They're conducting a routine sweep of returning patrol vessels. Standard identification protocols. Dr. Voss moved to the ship's biointerface station. I can handle the identification. My knowledge of Zephyrian biosignatures should be sufficient to fool their systems. Rosa watched the approaching destroyers on the tactical display. They were sleek vessels, their hulls covered in the same organic patterns as the Whisper, but armed with weapons that could tear through the scout ship's defenses in seconds. Incoming transmission, Blackwood reported. Audio only, in the Zephyrian primary language. Dr. Voss placed her hands on the biointerface, her expression growing distant as she connected with the ship's organic systems. When she spoke, her voice carried the harmonic undertones characteristic of Zephyrian communication. The exchange lasted for several tense minutes, with Dr. Voss responding to what seemed like routine identification queries. Rosa watched the destroyers approach, noting that they had not yet powered their weapons systems. Finally, Dr. Voss stepped back from the interface. They've cleared us for approach to the planet. We're supposed to be Scout Vessel Harmony, returning from a reconnaissance mission in the Vega system. Rosa felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Excellent work. Kai, take us in on a standard approach vector. The Whisper descended through Zephyria Prime's atmosphere, its hull rippling as it adapted to the changing environmental conditions. The planet's atmosphere was rich in exotic gases that created spectacular light displays, but Rosa knew that the same gases would be lethal to human lungs without proper protection. As they approached Nexus Gaia, the true scale of the city became apparent. The biomechanical structures stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction, their surfaces teeming with activity. Massive transportation arteries pulsed with bioluminescent fluid, carrying nutrients and information throughout the urban organism. Smaller vessels moved through the air between the structures, following paths that seemed to shift and change as the city's needs evolved. Landing coordinates have been transmitted to us, Okafor reported. Base 17 in the outer commercial district. Rosa studied the city's layout on the tactical display. The Shadow Engine complex was located at the city's heart, roughly 50 kilometers from their designated landing site. The journey would take them through multiple biozones, each with its own unique challenges and defenses. Remember, she told the team, once we're on the surface, we're deep in enemy territory. The biosuits will provide protection from the atmosphere and help us blend in, but our behavior will be the key to avoiding detection. The Whisper settled into the designated landing bay with barely a whisper of sound. Through the viewport, Rosa could see other vessels of various sizes and configurations, all sharing the same organic aesthetic. Zephyrian workers moved between the ships, their movements fluid and purposeful. Dr. Voss was already preparing the biosuits, remarkable garments that would not only protect them from the planet's atmosphere but also alter their appearance to mimic Zephyrian physiology. The suits were based on captured consortium technology, modified by Council scientists to respond to human neural patterns. The suits will adapt to our individual biometrics, Voss explained as she handed them out. They'll create the illusion of Zephyrian biosignatures while maintaining our human consciousness and motor functions. Rosa slipped into her suit, feeling the biomechanical fibers conform to her body. The sensation was unsettling, like being embraced by a living thing that was trying to understand her. The suit's surface rippled and changed, taking on the mottled patterns characteristic of Zephyrian skin. "How do I look?" she asked. Sergeant Chen, whose own suit had given him the appearance of a Zephyrian warrior caste, studied her critically. "Convincing. The facial modifications are particularly good. Rosa checked her reflection in the ship's polished surfaces. The biosuit had altered her features to resemble those of a Zephyrian scientist caste: elongated skull, large eyes adapted for low-light environments, and the characteristic bioluminescent patterns that served as both identification and communication. Equipment check, she ordered. Each team member had specialized gear suited to their role in the mission. Rosa carried a bioscanner and emergency medical supplies, while Sergeant Chen's pack contained the components of the quantum resonance disruptor. Dr. Voss had biological sampling equipment that would allow her to analyze the Shadow Engine's organic components. Lieutenant Commander Okafor carried navigation and communication gear, while Corporal Blackwood had electronic warfare tools disguised as standard Zephyrian data interfaces. Chief Petty Officer Knox carried nothing visible, but Rosa knew that the Umbran's psychic abilities were their primary weapon. "All systems green," Rosa announced. "Remember, we're a research team investigating biomechanical integration patterns. Our cover story is that we're studying the interface between organic and artificial systems in the city's infrastructure." The team moved to the ship's exit, where the biolock cycled open to reveal the alien environment beyond. Rosa took her first step onto Zephyria Prime, feeling the planet's biomechanical pulse through the soles of her feet. Rosa stepped onto Zephyria Prime, feeling the planet's biomechanical pulse through the soles of her feet. The sensation was unlike anything she had experienced, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to synchronize with her own heartbeat, as if the planet itself was alive and aware of her presence. The landing bay was a marvel of organic architecture. The walls curved and flowed like living tissue, their surfaces covered in bioluminescent patterns that shifted and changed in response to the activity within. The air itself seemed alive, filled with microscopic organisms that created a faint, pearlescent shimmer. Rosa's biosuit analyzed the atmosphere and reported a complex mixture of oxygen, nitrogen, and exotic gases that would have been toxic to human lungs without protection. The most striking feature of the bay was its ceiling, which wasn't a ceiling at all but rather a membrane that flexed and breathed like lung tissue. Through its translucent surface, Rosa could see the shadowy outlines of the city's transport arteries, pulsing with bioluminescent fluid that carried nutrients and information throughout the urban organism. "The air is filled with information particles," Dr. Voss explained quietly through their private communication channel. The Zephyrians use airborne biomolecular signals to communicate complex ideas instantaneously across vast distances. "It's like swimming through an ocean of thought." Rosa nodded, trying to process the alien environment while maintaining the appearance of a routine inspection. Other vessels filled the bay, sleek, organic shapes that seemed to have grown rather than been built. Some resembled massive insects with chitinous hulls and articulated limbs. Others looked like enormous sea creatures, their surfaces rippling with patterns that might have been camouflage or communication displays. Zephyrian workers moved between the vessels with fluid grace, their movements perfectly coordinated despite the apparent absence of any central authority. Rosa watched them carefully, noting how their biosuits had adapted to mimic their physiology. The Zephyrians were taller than humans, with elongated limbs and digits that ended in sensitive manipulation appendages. Their skin was covered in chromatophore cells that could change color and pattern to convey emotional states and complex information. "Stay close to me," Dr. Voss murmured as they moved toward the bay's exit. "The workers are performing a greeting ritual. They're acknowledging our presence and offering assistance." Rosa watched as several Zephyrians approached their group, their chromatophores displaying patterns of blue and green that Dr. Voss had explained indicated curiosity and welcome. The lead worker, whose larger size and more complex patterns suggested a supervisory role, addressed them in the harmonic tones of the Zephyrian language. Dr. Voss responded in kind, her biosuit modulating her voice to match the alien harmonics. The exchange was brief but seemed to satisfy the Zephyrians, who gestured toward the exit with graceful movements of their elongated arms. "They're directing us to the primary transport artery," Voss explained. "I told them we're a research team investigating biomechanical integration patterns in the city's infrastructure." As they left the landing bay, Rosa got her first full view of Nexus Gaia. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. The city stretched out in all directions, its biomechanical structures reaching toward the sky like the fingers of some impossibly vast organism. The buildings weren't separate structures but rather organs of a single, living entity that spanned the entire continent. The streets were actually arteries, their surfaces soft and yielding beneath their feet. Bioluminescent patterns flowed along the walls like veins carrying luminous blood, while overhead, membrane-covered conduits pulsed with the rhythm of the city's heartbeat. The air was filled with floating spores and biomechanical constructs that served as the city's sensory organs, constantly monitoring the health and needs of its inhabitants. "It's incredible," Lieutenant Commander Okafor whispered, his enhanced senses processing the complexity of the urban organism. "The entire city is a single living system. Every building, every street, every transport tube is connected to a central nervous system." Rosa nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not by the city's passive sensors, but by something else, something that lurked in the spaces between the organic structures, observing their every move. As they moved deeper into the city, following the main arterial pathway toward the center, Rosa began to notice subtle signs of the entity's influence. The bioluminescent patterns weren't random, they formed complex geometric shapes that seemed to exist in more than 3 dimensions. The Zephyrians they encountered moved with a synchronicity that was beautiful but unnatural, as if they were all responding to the same invisible conductor. "The patterns are hypnotic," Corporal Blackwood observed, her electronic warfare training making her sensitive to subliminal influences. "There's a mathematical precision to them that suggests they're designed to affect neural activity." Dr. Voss's bioscanner was recording everything, analyzing the city's biological signatures. "The entity's influence is everywhere. It's not just controlling the Zephyrians, it's rewriting the city's genetic code, turning the entire urban organism into an extension of itself." Rosa felt a chill despite the warm, humid air. They weren't just walking through an alien city, they were inside the body of something vast and intelligent, something that was using the Zephyrians and their technology as its nervous system and sensory organs. The deeper they went into the city, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The biomechanical structures grew more complex and alien, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The Zephyrians they encountered showed increasing signs of the entity's influence, their movements became more synchronized, their chromatophore patterns shifted to deeper, more unnatural colors, and their communications took on harmonic frequencies that Rosa's biosuit couldn't fully translate. "We're approaching the central nervous system," Rosa reported, checking their position on the bioscanner. "The Shadow Engine complex should be directly ahead." But as they rounded a corner in the arterial pathway, they found their way blocked by a group of Zephyrians unlike any they had encountered before. These beings stood nearly 3 meters tall, their bodies heavily modified with biomechanical enhancements. Their chromatophore patterns pulsed with deep purple light, and their eyes held the same unsettling depth that Rosa had seen in the entity's other servants. "Security cast," Dr. Voss whispered. "But they've been modified far beyond standard Zephyrian physiology. The entity has been using them as experimental subjects." The lead security officer approached their group, its movements precise and intimidating. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond the normal 3, making Rosa's teeth ache and her vision blur slightly. Dr. Voss stepped forward, her biosuit's translation systems working overtime to process the alien communication. The exchange was tense, with the security officer's patterns growing more aggressive as it questioned their presence in this part of the city. "It's asking for our research authorization codes," Voss explained. "The central nervous system is restricted to authorized personnel only." Rosa's mind raced through their options. They could try to bluff their way past the security checkpoint, but any detailed examination of their credentials would reveal the deception. They could attempt to fight their way through, but that would alert the entire city to their presence. Or they could try to find another route to the Shadow Engine complex, but their time was running out. The decision was made for them when Chief Petty Officer Knox suddenly stepped forward, their psychic presence expanding to fill the arterial pathway. The Umbran's dark eyes focused on the security officer, and for a moment, the two beings seemed to be engaged in a silent battle of wills. "The entity becomes aware," Knox said, their voice carrying undertones that resonated with Rosa's bones. It knows we are here. Stealth is no longer possible. As if responding to some unheard signal, the security officer's chromatophore patterns shifted to a deep red, and it began to emit a harmonic alarm that resonated through the city's biomechanical infrastructure. Around them, the arterial pathway began to pulse with increased urgency, and Rosa could hear the sounds of more security forces approaching from multiple directions. So much for the subtle approach, Sergeant Chen muttered, checking his weapon systems. I hope everyone's ready for the direct method. The beauty of it is almost overwhelming, Dr. Voss murmured through their private communication channel. It's like walking through the bloodstream of a god. Rosa forced herself to focus on the mission. Beauty or not, they were in the heart of enemy territory, and any mistake could mean capture or death. Zara, are you picking up any unusual scanning activity? Corporal Blackwood's biosuit had adapted to give her the appearance of a Zephyrian information specialist, complete with the neural interface tendrils that allowed direct connection to the city's data networks. Passive scans only. The city is constantly monitoring its inhabitants, but it's looking for signs of illness or distress, not infiltrators. The city is designed to care for its inhabitants, Dr. Voss explained. It's a symbiotic relationship. The Zephyrians provide biological energy and neural input, while the city provides shelter, sustenance, and information. Rosa nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Not by the city's passive sensors, but by something else. Something that existed in the spaces between dimensions. They followed the main arterial pathway toward the city's center, moving with the flow of Zephyrian citizens. The deeper they went into the city, the more complex the biomechanical structures became. Buildings that had seemed solid from a distance revealed themselves to be living entities, their walls breathing and their surfaces covered in sensory organs that tracked the movement of everything nearby. The Shadow Engine complex should be about 30 kilometers ahead, Rosa reported. According to our intelligence, it's accessible through the city's central nervous system. Chief Petty Officer Knox suddenly stopped, their dark eyes focusing on something that the others couldn't see. It knows we are here. The entity has become aware of our presence. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine. How? Our thoughts are not Zephyrian. Despite the biosuits, our neural patterns are distinctly human. The entity feeds on consciousness itself, it can taste the difference. Before Rosa could respond, the city around them began to change. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls shifted from their normal blue-green to a deep crimson, and the soft arterial pathways beneath their feet began to pulse with increased urgency. Warning signals, Dr. Voss said, her voice tight with concern. The city is going into defensive mode. Rosa made a quick decision. We need to move fast. If the city is alerting the authorities, we have maybe minutes before security forces arrive. The team broke into a run, following the arterial pathways toward the city's center. Behind them, Rosa could hear the sounds of pursuit, not footsteps, but the rhythmic pulsing of biomechanical enforcement units sliding through the city's transportation network. There, Lieutenant Commander Okafor pointed ahead to a massive structure that rose from the city's heart like a twisted spire. The central nervous system. The structure was unlike anything Rosa had ever seen. It resembled a massive brain, its surface covered in neural pathways that pulsed with electrical activity. Thousands of tendrils extended from its base, connecting it to every part of the city. At its peak, a swirling portal of energy marked the entrance to the Shadow Engine complex. The quantum resonance disruptor, Rosa called to Sergeant Chen. How long do you need to prepare it? 30 minutes to assemble, another 10 for calibration, Chen replied, his voice steady despite the danger. Rosa looked back at their pursuers, sleek, biomechanical creatures that moved through the city's arteries like antibodies responding to an infection. We don't have that much time. Chief Petty Officer Knox stepped forward, their forms seeming to blur and shift as they tapped into their psychic abilities. I can delay them. But not for long. The entity's influence grows stronger the closer we get to the engine. Rosa nodded grimly. Do it. Everyone else, into the central nervous system. We end this now.